My name is Dr. Ian Storch. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist and osteopathic physician, and you are listening to DO or Do Not. If you're interested in joining our team or have suggestions or comments, please contact us at doordonotpodcast.com. Share our link with your friends and like us on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Char, and I'm a third-year medical student at Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine, and you are listening to DO or Do Not. Today, we're thrilled to have Alex Sher, DO, a rising first-year psychiatry resident and a writer for the DO magazine, who was born and raised in Southern Florida. Alex's story is special as medicine is his second career, and he started as a registered nurse on the surgical floor. Dr. Sher had a thirst for knowledge and went back to school at night while working full-time to get a degree as a nurse practitioner, ultimately working in a family practice and then an urgent care clinic. With the support of some osteopathic mentors, Alex picked up his family and moved to Tennessee to attend Lincoln Memorial University-DeBusk College of Osteopathic Medicine. Alex will discuss with us as how a non-traditional student with a family, he navigated the challenges of taking the MCAT, returning to college, and applying to medical school. He offers valuable advice to those considering different paths in healthcare. He will explain his pride in osteopathic medicine that led him to become active on the DO magazine's Editorial Advisory Board. Join us as we explore Alex's unique story and gain insights into the diverse opportunities within the medical field.
Alex Sher, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Dr. Storch.
Alex, I'm so excited to have you. Now, we're having you on for a specific reason, which we're going to explain in a few minutes, but a lot of things I want to talk to you about. So can you start by telling us what you're doing now and where you're going?
All right. So I recently graduated a few weeks ago from Lincoln Memorial University in Tennessee. And I'm heading off to psychiatry residency in Baycare in Tampa, Florida.
That's awesome. We're going to come back to that. I met you because you're a writer for the journal, The DO, and you're going into psychiatry, which is a great specialty, very competitive. Everybody wants to be a psychiatrist nowadays, which is cool. Mental health is great. But were you always a diehard osteopath? How do you become writing for the DO? How did that happen?
I started DO school and I wanted to be involved with the AOA. I wanted to do something to promote osteopathic medicine. And they actually had, it was like a little cattle call, you would call it, right? In acting. It was in LinkedIn. They had a little picture saying, looking for people for the DO magazine to join the editorial board. And then I inquired about it and they said, yeah, we're revamping the magazine. Viewership went down a little bit. We're thinking that we make this magazine by DOs and osteopathic students for DOs and osteopathic students. So they were recruiting. I sent in my resume. I told them about what I used to do. And they said, come aboard. It was Dr. Clower at the time was the head of the AOA.
Awesome.
And we met with them and he's like, I think you'll be great. And I was on that first board this is almost 4 years ago.
That's a long time. Tell us about some of the articles that you've written and some of the experiences that you've had.
Like I said, we were revamping the journal. We brought Dr. Vanya Manipad on, and we were, I would say, like end of 2020, around this time. We had a big meeting with everyone on the editorial board, and we're like, let's start from scratch. We're going to start columns. Let's kick around some ideas. And one of them was DO to know. You go out. We're interviewing Dr. Storch, just DOs who are doing some in the community. We even interviewed osteopathic students. And I said, I would love to do that. I'm a people person. I like talking to people. And I just ran off with the column. And I'll take a break once or twice, for board prep. And I'll have somebody fill in. But I just ran with that. They offered it to me too. And here I am now, almost 3 years later, specifically on that column. And I write other things, mental health pieces I'll do.
Very cool. All right. So now we're going to get into sort of the main focus, Alex, and I'm going to give a little background. So I had a student years ago It was right after the pandemic. His name is Ben Berg. He's actually been working with us on the podcast. He's going to Toro, California next year. So I'm really proud of him. He's great. But originally, his dad called me, and his dad's a GI doc, a good friend of mine. So his dad called and said, listen, my son is just finished a business degree at Albany State in New York. He doesn't know what direction he wants to take his life in, but he's really thinking about going into healthcare, and he's thinking about a PA or a physician, some sort of physician extender, which I think is great. I work with physician extenders all the time. And again, we're going to talk about that more. I think it's a great profession. I think it's a great career, whether it's a PA or a nurse practitioner. I think those degrees are great. But ultimately, he came and worked in my office for about a year, and we kind of bonded, and he's great and smart. And I said to him, I think you should be a doctor. And again, I kind of put him on the path to medical school. Now, did I just ruin the poor kid's life? I don't know, right? So that's kind of where I want to go with this. I think the listeners will hear how we're going to get there. So, Alex, tell us where you grew up and how you became involved in medicine.
Oh, this is a story. All right. So I'm a guy from South Florida, Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Grew up, no one was really in medicine in my family. My uncle was a CPA, so I thought, hey, I'm a young kid. I'll go be like my Uncle Joe. And I got a bachelor's in accounting, got a master's.
Where'd you go?
Florida Atlantic University. Did
Okay.
Broward Community College, like your other guest, Dr. Lentius. I did that for 2 years. Great school. Shout out Central Campus over there in Davie, Florida. And they took care of me. I did well. Went to Florida Atlantic in Boca. Got my accounting degree, my MBA. Was sitting for the CPA exam. Really wasn't studying for it. Didn't care for it, actually. Failed the first part. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I think I would have been a miserable accountant. So now we're in the midst of this economic downturn, right? 9, 10, 11, those years. I'm in my 30s now. Hard to find a job. And I said, you know what? I've always liked doing something in healthcare. And the time my grandmother was sick, so I'd go over her house, take care of her. And I really like patient care. And I was like, I should just go into nursing school. I just on a whim. I said, I'll do it. I got a year of prereqs, taking care of grandma, doing prereqs at her house while she's sleeping. Did nursing for a few years, loved it.
Tell us a little bit about being a nurse. Were you a floor nurse? Were you working in an office? What were you doing? What was that like?
So I made my bones on the med surg floor, right? Because they would tell every new nurse, you got to do a year. You get a night job. I got a night nursing job. I went up to West Palm Hospital. It's called JFK North now. Worked the med surg floor. And was it a great place? It was also, I had an attached psych facility. So that's where I started experiencing with a lot of behavioral patients. And I was nights, med surg. And then after a year, right, you put the Foley's and doing all this, they say, move up to a better floor. So then I went to Delray Medical Center and I did trauma. Loved it. And that's kind of where I saw what nurse practitioners were doing, because you would see them running back and forth on the trauma floor. I said, I want to do that. So I took night classes at UCF. They had like a hybrid. You do some online, you come in for the day, you do your clinicals. So that for like 2.5 years.
You were working while you were doing the MP?
Yep.
Or were you taking it easy and hanging out on the beach for the rest?
No, I wish I was.
Right.
I did my 3 night shifts in a row. And then with those 3 days off, 4 days off, I would do my NP work. So I kept myself busy. Oh, yeah, I kept myself busy. So eventually I finished UCF, great school.
For our listeners that don't know what a nurse practitioner, now a floor nurse, we could talk about obviously putting in Foley's, you're distributing
IVs,
IVs, all that stuff. Now you, again, change roles. I don't want to say step up because nursing is a great job, but you go into sort of a higher level decision-making job, and you work as a nurse practitioner in a family practice. What is the level of responsibility for those listeners that don't know of a nurse practitioner? Is it similar to a doctor? Is it the same as a doctor? Maybe you're under a doctor. Can you tell us what that relationship was like and what it was like working as a nurse practitioner?
So honestly, you're a new family nurse practitioner right out of school. You do about 500-600 hours of clinical time, 2.5 years of coursework. So you come out into the real world and it's scary because you were a nurse before, more following orders, and you would call the doctor if you noticed something suspicious, because nursing is that front line. And I feel a doctor with a good nurse, you can save patients' lives. And I'm sure you know that, Dr. Storch, too. But now I'm going decision-making side. Before I would tell the doc, hey, doc, blood pressure's creeping up. Can I get some orders? This. Now I'm the guy that's got to, or girl that's got to do this. So that was a big adjustment. And what saved me was I was fortunate enough as a new nurse practitioner to have a family doctor that really took me under her wing. She was an MD out of California. And I had a more seasoned nurse practitioner also take me under her wing because, there's no residency. You finish schooling, you have your 500-600 hours. I had several years of nursing under my belt. So that helped me with communicating with patients and kind of feeling out and reading patients. But it's another level. Now I'm operating, I had my own set of patients, so I was kind of operating independently, but I was fortunate enough to have those two more experience. One was a doctor, one was an MP to lean in on. So that was a scary transition for me. That was tough to go from there. Then after a year and a half of that, I felt more comfortable and I went to an urgent care. Or again, I had a tight relationship with the doctors. That's when I met the DOs.
Okay, so now when you're at the urgent care, now you have some experience, you're a
Mm-hmm.
nurse practitioner, you obviously are all in. Like you could tell talking to you for 2 minutes, whatever you do, you're all in, right? So you're doing this MP thing, you're all in, you're in the urgent care.
Got it.
Do you present every patient to the physician? How is that relationship after you've assessed the patient? Like if you feel comfortable, do you just go with what you need to do?
So when I started MP Roll, right, 2015, I graduated. Florida was the only state where we couldn't write scheduled drugs. We didn't have DA. So anyone right off the bat who came in with a broken arm, I worked in a clinics kind of sometimes that you were the only provider and you would call in, or we had other clinics where we had the doctor right next to us. So for any kind of scheduled for fracture, something like this, the doc would have to write my script. But in general, I could take care of most of my cases, something simple, right? Earache, sore throat, strep, but there would be more complex cases that walked in that needed a CT of the abdomen, right? Certain stuff, bad lacerations that you felt, maybe this should be seen in the ER. But I was a nurse practitioner that had no problem with that relationship, going to the doctor, presented. There was no ego, and there shouldn't be an ego when caring for patients. And that's how I learned a lot. I did that for 5 years. And you grow because again, I'm going to a 4-year residency for just psychiatry. Here I had to learn, I was playing, a lot of people came in there, should have been in the ER. So you learn a lot.
So now at what point did you decide you want to go to med school? Like you wanted something different?
Okay. So a year and a half at the family practice place. Then I go to the urgent care and probably in about 6 months I'm talking to DOs and one guy, he was a colonel in the Army and he was a DO and he goes, Alex, I was a chiropractor before I went to medical school. I see his name was Dr. Wilson, Dr. Jeffrey Wilson, retired. I think he's a full bird. He has a big position. And I go, you really went back? Because I didn't think you could go back. I think I was already 30 at the time, 31. I had kids. I already had 3 kids. And he's like, no, I went back, Alex. And I go, wow, this guy was a chiropractor and he went back. That's 4 years of schooling. And he planted the seed in my head. He's like, think about it. And then there was another DO, Dr. Carl Elser. And he goes, you ever thought about it? And I said, Dr. Wilson just asked me that maybe less than a month ago. He goes, well, I was an engineer before I went to osteopathic school. I said, how old? He goes, 35. He was 35. And I go, wow. And those 2 DOs planted the seed. And who would have thought? And then I looked up. So we're 6 months in out the urgent care. I looked up classes. I was like, what do I need? They're like bio 1 and 2, physics, all this stuff. So literally a week or 2 later, enrolled into night classes. And after work, and the nurse practitioner, she used to write the schedule. I pulled her aside. Her name's Joy Cruz. I said, Joy, I'm thinking about going to medical school. I need to take these classes. She's like, we'll make the schedule work. I'll do it for you, Alex. So here I am now, 7 years later.
Yeah, wait, hold on. I got more questions. We're not done with this. So, like, what did your wife say? Right? I assume you're married. Again, I apologize for that. But so what is you go home, you just did all this stuff, you got 3 kids at home. Obviously, you're gonna still work, but like, what does your wife say when you tell her this? Is she like, you're out of your mind? Is she like, go for it?
We just bought a new house maybe 6, 7 months early because the pay went up, right? From family nurse practitioner to urgent care. So I said, let's get you a new car. We're getting a new house. We had this nice life now. I'm making 6 figures. It's good. And she just looked at me and she's like, is this what you really want to do? And I said, I just felt I wanted, it was something internal, and they added, I guess, fuel to the fire because it was in there. And they could tell. I feel you could tell as a healthcare provider when someone, it's hard to explain, but the wife said, let's do it. I'll support you. Because without her support, I wouldn't be here. So that was a good question, Dr. Storch.
So then you have to take the MCAT, you have to do the prereqs. So tell me, how long did that take? And then tell me a little bit about your application process
Okay.
and how you picked the school.
So now I felt, I'm going to be applying in my early 30s. I go, this is going to be a disadvantage, I feel. 8, 9 years older than the average guy or girl. So I took night class, and I lived in Melbourne, small coastal beach town, no real big university there. So I go, there was a state college. It offered night classes. I go, are they going to look at it? I'm not going to a big university. So this is advice for kids out there. If you lived in a smaller community like I did, in Fort Lauderdale, we had a bunch of universities. Here in Melbourne, so I went to Eastern Florida State College. I looked up, I need Bio 1, and I would throw in an elective with it. And I would do 2 classes a semester. Took me a year and a half. Bio 1, 2, Physics 1, 2, Calculus, Organic 1, 2. And I got straight A's because I would read online. Oh, they look down on a smaller school if it's not a big, University of Florida. I was like, let me get straight A's. This is all I have. And then I studied for the MCAT. Did decent to get a few interviews. Would I have recommend doing a course? Probably. But again, I was working full time.
Right.
And that's what I loved about being a DO. They see the whole picture.
Awesome. You do your interviews. Now, when you were on your interviews, were they asking you about being older? I don't know if they're even allowed to. Were they asking about your nursing experience? Like what were they talking to you about on the interviews when you went?
So I applied DO and MD. I got great letters from the DOs that worked with me. So I felt DO schools just loved my application because that's where I didn't get any MD interviews, actually. I got DO interviews, and they were asking mainly about my previous life. They didn't care that I did my prereqs at a little state college in Florida. They just saw the grades. They saw I got straight A's in those classes, and they asked me a lot about my nursing and why are you going to become a doctor? And I told them, it's just a calling. I just wanted to do more, learn more. Because 4 years of med school, woo, that's a story in itself, right?
I'm going to take a little pause and we're going to come back to your journey. But what I want to ask you, and this is where I needed some help. I don't know where Alex Sher was in 2021 when Ben Berg came to my office. And again, hopefully I didn't give Ben Berg the wrong advice. But let's say you were hanging out with me in New York in 2021 and Ben Berg came to you and said, look, I'm interested in a healthcare career. My dad thinks I should become, again, he told him he should be a PA, and without offending anybody, I like to just kind of group mid-levels together. Let's say he said, look, I'm thinking about nursing. I'm thinking about nurse practitioner. I'm thinking about doctor. How would you guide someone that knew they wanted to go into the healthcare profession, but wasn't sure what role they would want? How would you counsel that person?
So your guy, Ben, if someone was already a nurse, going to become an MP is a natural progression. Now, if somebody who wasn't a nurse, I would say probably PA would be the easier route. But now what would I tell them to do? You got to spend some time with Ben, right? And you felt him out and you're like, you know what, this guy, it's a big investment. So you have to be all in with medical school. You have to be, because it's a 4-year journey. You can work. I know PA school, Lincoln Memorial offers it. I think it's 2.5 years, so it's shorter. So you got to be true with yourself. Can you do this journey? Some people don't have 4 years in it, and then another 3+ years for residency. Some people are just, I can barely do this, but I want to do something in healthcare. Because essentially, there's MPs, for example, they have full independence in half the states in America. I think it's like 26, 27 states. After a year to 3 years of working under somebody, you can be independent. Now, We all know you're going to learn a lot more in medical school. The depth of the information is a lot more. NP, we had to cover a lot of it, but we can't go too deep. And you have the residency. Dr. Storch?
It's a tough decision, right?
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. If they have it in them to do it, I'd say go to medicine. Go all the way. Go all the way. If you feel like you can't take these 4 years off, there's nothing wrong with being a mid-level. I would have happily have done it my whole life, but just something inside me wanted more. I felt like I had one more push, and I wanted to know that information. Some people don't care to know everything, right? There's no one to bounce it. You're a GI doc, right? There's no one to bounce it off of. If you have a nurse practitioner PA under you, they can call you. Not all the pressure's on you a lot of times. If you have a good setup, sometimes they'll throw a mid-level or advanced practice provider into the frying pan. So you think you may be getting off. I'm not doing so many years of schooling. I don't have to do residency, but they may just throw you in the middle of nowhere with no backup and say, hey, you're independent now. Good luck. And that's scary, those beginning years. You don't have a good foundation.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think it's easy to say that you want the responsibility, but being a physician, I'm sure, as you're saying, there's plenty of stress, I'm sure, being a nurse practitioner, but there's definitely, I would think that there's a heightened level of responsibility. And that sounds glorious, but if you're an ER attending and whatever happens is going to be ultimately on your conscience and legally your responsibility, there's definitely got to be a little more stress than being an extender that can, as you're saying, bounce it off the attending.
Correct.
Or if you're at a point where you feel that you're above where you should be, could be, you have somebody above you to help, and a physician may not have that, right?
And not everybody wants that either. That's the thing. So if that's your personality, if you want to be the be-all, know-all, come to medicine. We'll torture you for 4 years, and then we'll throw you through some more residency. But at the end of it, you're going to be one competent, I feel, and sharp doctor, especially if you go the DO route.
Awesome. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Alex, tell me, so you got into Lincoln and you put your family in the car and drove them out there. Tell us what that experience was like and what it was like going to med school with 3 kids and a wife in tow.
And let's add on some more. I went in right during the pandemic starting in 2020. I get into medical school. I leave around June, and my job before I left with my old group was to get all the doctors on telemedicine. So for those last 3 months before I went to medical school, I was setting everybody up on telemedicine, saying goodbye to the whole group. We pack up. I list the house for sale, the one I bought 3.5 years prior. I was going to miss it. And I move everybody up. We found a nice house in Cumberland Gap, beautiful little mountain town, white picket fence, quiet. You could walk with the kids on the stroller. It was nice. The wife really liked to change the scenery. Beautiful mountains everywhere. So we move them all up. We throw everything in a U-Haul with a big trailer behind it, the 26-footer with the trailer. Her dad's from Rhode Island, so he's one of these guys that thinks he can do everything. So I said, all right, you drive the truck and I'll sit next to you. We were going up and down the mountains. It was scary, but we made it and had a great few years there. Studied more than I ever thought I would in my life. Funny thing was, we even had a kid in medical school. I finished the first semester and my wife goes, wow, you got a lot of A's. Thought you were maybe going to be a kind of a C+ guy. I started laughing and she goes, well, since you had your dream of going to medical school, you know what my dream is, Alex? I said, what? She said to have a 4th baby.
Oh,
I said, ay. Well, and here we go. I got a 4th one now, Anastasia. Who am I to hold somebody back from their dreams, right?
such a good husband, right? And you already had family practice experience, you had trauma experience, you dealt with surgeons, you had medical experience, your medical floor, so you internists you hung out with, family practice, and then urgent care, mostly ER docs, or very frequently ER background. So you've seen all of these different specialties. And I know you said you did spend some time in the mental health when you were a nurse also. So at what point did everything click and you said, look, I want to be a psychiatrist? How did that happen and when did that happen?
So that's a good question. My background mainly it was with a lot of medicine and a little bit of behavioral health for sure and the surgeons. But I thought in the beginning, right when I went in, I thought maybe I'll do family medicine so I could do a little bit of everything because that's how family nurse practitioners are too. We our certification, and now I can go work urgent care. I could go work outpatient. I could work as a hospitalist. I could work ER. So I thought kind of that nursing mind. I'll go do family meds so I can go into all these realms. And then when I got into medical school, you're like, wow, now I know why there's specialties because you're learning every system, GI. You're like, what is going on here? This is more than just GERD and ulcers and colonoscopy. This is a lot deeper than that. So as you go through each system, you realize, wow, there's a lot. So I think I need to specialize. And I did my psych track second year as well, psychiatry. And Dr. Snodgrass was a great professor. And I was like, this sounds like it's it right here. I like this. And I remembered when I was a nurse working for that hospital, JFK North, with a huge behavioral wing, and I would take care of them when they had medical issues. So if you were in the behavioral unit and cholecystitis, you came up to my floor and I cared for a lot of them. And that's when it clicked, just seeing the depth of knowledge you need.
Okay, so you decide you want psych, and take us through a little bit on your application process. Now, were you looking to be in a certain geographic area? Were you just throwing out a net? Did you do audition rotations that you feel really set you up? And what were your interviews like? And tell us about how you kind of set up your rank list.
Yeah, so I'm a Florida guy through and through, and I have my family here. My dad's from the old country. He's in his 80s. If I would have left him, he would have guilt me for the rest of my life. But I love my family. I love my wife's family. They're very good to us too. So I knew I had to stay in Florida. Good state. They took care of us, right? So my priority was Florida, and we had a lot of psych programs in Florida. Georgia, the Southeast. I kind of spread the net mainly in the South. I went a little bit west, Texas. I threw a few in New England, but I knew, there's a program in Rhode Island, Brown, right? These big schools. And so I casted a few up there, but it was mainly geographical where I want to be. And that's where I got most of my interviews from, geographic as well. And I did auditions, did 3 in the state of Florida. I went to HCA programs. They had a little system you can set up, had a great time. Rotated again with my behavioral health department in Tennessee with Dr. Snodgrass. She showed me a lot. And when it came to interview, they loved the story too. Everyone always likes a good comeback story, right?
Absolutely. So, Alex, actually, I have a side question that I want to ask you before we come back to psych. So, your whole story is amazing. We interviewed a friend of mine early on in the podcast who she actually went to med school in China. The story is amazing. Med school in China. She came to the US. She became a nurse. Then she became a cardiothoracic nurse practitioner. Then she went to osteopathic school. Then she became an ER critical care doc, and now she like runs the cardiothoracic ICU. So a
Wow.
similar story to you. You're not done, so don't try to live up to her. You got a couple of years left. And always the reason that we interviewed her is whenever I spoke to the nurses about her, they all loved her, like loved her, like said that she gives us so much autonomy, so much respect. So you could think that one might sort of maybe take the other approach and be like, no, I'm not a nurse. I'm a doctor now. You kind of take that hierarchy. Obviously, you're a great guy. How do you interact with the nurses and the nurse practitioners as a medical student? What was that interaction like?
You throwing some heaters on me. Okay. No, but so the nurses, you gotta understand when you step on the floor, when I worked as med surge, we're there 12, 13 hours, 3, 4, 5 days in a row. It's the nurses' floor. The doctors are visiting. And as long as the doctors understood that, we had a great relationship with them. No, just all jokes aside. But yeah, so the nurses, they know everything on the floor. So when I came in as a med student, you could see the nurses looking at us, wondering, are we going to respect their floor? This is their house. So you come in, they say, take off your shoes or why, whatever you do, this is their house. So I always treated them with respect. And I had a few ask me, they're like, you used to be a nurse. They could just tell. I would try not to tell them though. I would try not to play the card if I didn't have to. But They would figure me out, majority of them. And I would say, yeah, I worked med surg. I did trauma. I did this. I was an MP. And a lot of them would run up to me and go, I'm thinking about doing nurse practitioner. I would say, do it. Because I'm all for advancing yourself, whatever it is. Because you learn more. You can do more for the patient, for the hospital system. There's just a rising tide lifts all the shifts. So I always believed in that. So I would always encourage them. And that was that dynamic. And I would tell my med students, I would say that were rotating with me, I was like, be nice. She told you this, go do it. She told you to go to that room and drop that off. Don't give us a bad name here.
All right, Alex, first of all, thank you so much for spending time with us. I know you have your daughter's graduation to go to. We're going to make sure you get there. So, grand finale question. Can you give us one piece of advice that you were given from someone else that has been very impactful in your career and you would like to share with our listeners?
Okay, this is Dr. Wilson. This is when we were, 12-hour shift in at the urgent care. We were talking about me being a doctor. And he goes, Alex, I could tell you want to learn more. You want to do more. He goes, remember this, you don't know what you don't know. Pretty much staying humble and keep learning and keep growing. And that's how I felt. I kept a lot of patients safe. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know this disease exists, you're just going to overlook it. This is pertaining to healthcare, of course, this question. And this goes out to medical students and probably residents. Be humble. And that's what's kept me humble and kept me eager and learning and growing. Another DO, of course, told me that one.
That's great, Alex. It's great. And it's funny, I'll tell you, I think that's great advice. Wife, a dietitian who's retired and home with the kids, and she doesn't want to hear about my day, but sometimes I'll tell her a patient came in, they asked me a question, I didn't know the answer. I told them I'll look it up. She's like, how could you tell them that? You think they can come back and see you if you're going to look it up? I always tell her, and I tell my students also, there's no shame in not knowing the answer. There's only shame in not finding out the answer. So if you don't know it, you look it up. That's all good. Fair game.
And that's just kind of been my life story. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be a DO. And I feel like we have a brotherhood and a sisterhood, osteopathic physicians. Going to OMED and all these other places, you can just feel that camaraderie. That's what I love about our profession as well.
Alex, you are so excited and so positive and are going to have such a great career. I'm so excited to see where everything takes you. And thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Storch. It was a pleasure.
This concludes our episode of Do or Do Not. Send all inquiries, comments, suggestions, and even let us know if there's someone you want us to interview to doordonotpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Do or Do Not Podcast for updates. If you enjoyed our podcast, please share it with your classmates and administration. We have plenty of more interviews lined up, and we're excited to share them with you. This is Tianyu Shea. Thank you guys so much for listening to Do or Do Not.